get wisdom, understanding, that's what you will find. More than silver, gold, or pearl, and everything is mine. Nothing can compare that you desire or try. In Torah I'm delighting, think on it day and night. Long knife in her right hand, in her left are riches there. Orech yamim obimina, abismo lach avod osher. Oh, all the ways are pleasantness, and all the paths are peace. A tree of life to all who hold her, and from it we will feed. Long life in her right hand, in her left are riches there. Orech yamim bimina, abismo lach avod osher. Oh, all the ways are pleasantness, and all the paths are peace. A tree of life to all who hold her, and from it we will eat. A tree of life to all who hold her, and from it we will feed. Lord, thank you for handing us the Torah, passing it down, keeping it intact, keeping it pure, keeping it your love letter to us. All of its ways are pleasantness. All of its ways lead to shalom. And if we keep pushing, if we keep trying, if we keep striving to keep straight on that narrow, narrow, narrow bridge without falling off one side or the other, you give us pleasantness, you give us shalom. Thank you, Abba. Amen. 2 years ago is when I finally got my head wrapped around that God has kept Judaism perfect and how the, quote, oral Torah fits into that. It was 2 years ago. And I taught it at this Torah portion, Shoftim. I mean, I had learned it maybe, 2 months before, something like that, very recent. And I was just like, oh my God, this answers all the questions about, quote, Rabbinic Judaism. All of them. Every single question that I've ever heard, that I've ever been asked, and I continue to get asked by believers, by Messianic Jews and by Gentile believers about, quote, Rabbinic Judaism. All of them are answered. So this time when I read it, this time when I went through Shoftim, Torah portion Shoftim, I had all these questions in mind because I just had a conversation with a Messianic Jew who has been in Messianic Judaism for years. He's got a ministry, he does all this wonderful stuff, he studies what we call pictures. He still doesn't quite have the understanding of commandments, how that's a bad word, mistranslation, and obey is a bad word, although he pretty much knows that. So he's working on that. And that there's no such thing as obedience, but listening. And he's pretty much got that down. But then I found out that his whole background is Christian. He goes to a synagogue, a conservative synagogue. He's had a ministry in Messianic Judaism, etc. So I found out that his grandfather and his father were Baptist, I believe it was, preachers. And he became a Baptist preacher. But it's a Jewish family. I won't say his name, but it's a Jewish family, a very Jewish family. So I was like, what? So then I went back and I read some stuff that he sent me. He's written some books working on a siddur, other things. And it was, a lot of it, and I know it's geared toward Christians, but a lot of it was just like reading a Baptist book. And I was like, okay, you still got this dichotomy working. So, and I talked to him on the phone, and we talked about, quote, Rabbinic Judaism. And he was like, yeah, I get it. And I was like, something's going on here. So he's still working through that understanding. So I'm calling this Rabbinic Judaism, the Sages, and Paul. Because all the questions I get asked and all the discussions about, quote, Rabbinic Judaism, all come down to the same questions, the same thing. So I really dug into it this week. So hopefully we can wrestle with some things. Hopefully. We'll see. So we're in Deuteronomy 17. Torah portion is called Shoftim, Judges. It says, if a case is too difficult for you to decide. So who's the you? If a case is too difficult for you to decide. Yeah, first question is like, who's it addressing? Remember, this is part of the rebuke in Moshe's last, how long? 36, very good. 36 days. His last 36 days, he's rebuking Israel. This is part of it. And he says to Israel, if in Israel there's a case too difficult for you to decide. Okay, let me stop here. Now, at the same time, I've been watching the show Vikings on Netflix. This show is amazing. But then the Vikings meet the Christians of England. And this is in the year, I think, 600, right around 600. Yeah, so now you got this clash of the pagan Vikings, and then you got the pagan Christians. They are so pagan. It's disgusting. But they quote verses like this. And like, we are to go to the judge if a case is too difficult for us to decide. And so all of Christian Europe, from as early as, I'd say, 400, maybe even earlier than 400, began to say that every verse in the Torah is not about the Jews, it's about us. And it applies to us. Okay? This is to the Jews only. Why is it to the Jews only? Because they're the one who have the rule book. Nobody else has the rule book. So basically what he's going to say is you got to go to the rule book. But you got to have somebody to interpret the rule book. Why? Because as life goes on, everything's going to change. And change again, and change again, and change again, and change again, and change again. And all these things are going to come up that you don't know how to decide or figure out, like AI. All the rabbis are now talking and trying to figure out the Torah for AI. And it is not easy. It's taken already almost a year for the sages in Israel to figure it out. And they're still working on it. Okay. If a case is too difficult for you, Israel, to decide between blood and blood, what does that mean?
Family.
No, it's murder. Oh. This is murder, shedding blood. Between judge and judge, what does that mean? Now, this is a weird word. It's not judge like a judge you set up. It's judge like you...
A decision.
A decision, right. A plea, a court case. But it's not a court case. It's like what you're bringing to the court. What is a plea or a...
Testimony.
No, not testimony. Like your case. A case. That's what it is. It's case and case. Like cases are against each other. My case says you're wrong. Your case says I'm wrong. Got to decide. Between strike, the word nega, which means hit or strike, we translate as assault, and assault. So those are the three biggies, four biggies. Murder, three. Murder, the cases, and assaults. Okay? Everything falls under those three, basically. Matters of strife, dispute within your gates. Then you shall arise and go up to the place which the Lord your God chooses. All right, this word, strife or dispute. So yes, everything falls under those three if you have a case against a case, yeah? But what if it's like, should you eat milk and meat together? Who's your case against? What if it's like, how long should you wait after you wash your hands to eat on Shabbat for the second meal? I'm just picking something very, very arbitrary. So this is also matters to be judged and decided because things change. Should you drive a car on Shabbat? Things like that. You say from the east side. These are right.
No.
These are matters that have to be judged and figured out. So yes, everything for human beings falls in those three. But what about stuff with God? That doesn't fall under those three. That falls under God and man, which is different. And that's why it says the word matters of strife and dispute. Because yeah, you can have strife and dispute with people, but what about strife and dispute with God? Because you don't know the answer.
For your own self.
You go and you find the answer. So it's going to tell us how to find the answer. Then, if you have any of that stuff, then you shall arise and go up to the place which the Lord your God chooses. All right, so when is Moses saying this?
His last days.
His last days, last month or so, right? I don't know how far in, we're in chapter 17, I don't know how many days it's been, but he's in the middle of this rebuke to Israel, and they're about to go into the land and go where to hear from God? Yeah, but he's not going to choose that until David finds it 500 years later. Have you ever thought about that? So they're going to be going to the tabernacle in Shiloh and Gibeah and Mizpah. Well, actually, Mizpah, Shiloh, and Gibeah for 500 years until David discovers where God placed his name. Nobody knows until that. Did you ever think about that? And then in Samuel, it tells us that David discovers this is the place of the altar right before he dies. And he says, Solomon, that's where you're going to put the temple because this is the place that God has chosen to put his name. So what about the 500 years till then? They're going to the tabernacle. So it's a little difficult. You go up to the place which the Lord your God chooses, but he ain't going to do that for 500 years. So you shall come to the Levitical priests or the judges in those days. That's why it says that. So you can go up to the temple once we know where the temple's going to be. But what do you do before that? You go to the judges. You go to the priests, the Levitical priests. Does that make sense? Okay. So that also tells us this, that later on when there's a temple, it's going to change, it's going to morph, it's going to grow, where it's not just the Levitical priests who are teaching. Who's it going to be? The people that we call the sages. They're not all priests. In fact, very few of them are. Does that make sense? But they're still the judges, but they're just not the priests. So you come to the Levitical priest or the judge who is in those days, whatever days it is, and you shall inquire, and they shall declare to you the word, the judgment. Now watch this. You must do according to the word that they tell you from the place that God has chosen. You must be careful to, number one, do according to everything they teach or instruct you. Number two, you must do according to the Torah that they instruct you. That's different. Do you see the difference? Mm-hmm. And number three, you must be careful to do the judgment that they tell you, which is also different from the first two, which I'll show you more about that. But the person who acts insolently It does not listen to the priest who stands there to serve the Lord your God, or to the judge, who may not be a priest. That person shall be put to death. So you shall eliminate the evil from Israel. Then all the people will hear and fear and will not act insolently again. So this, now it's gotten super heavy all of a sudden about hearing, right? 4 weeks ago we had listen to the voice of the Lord. Okay, how do we do that? Next week, listen to the ekev. What's the ekev? The heel, the small little mitzvot that everybody doesn't care about. And if you listen to the small ones, you will then what? Listen to the big ones, yeah? Then we had the next week. Now, don't just listen to the ekev, listen to all the mitzvot talking to you. Yes? Now we've come to this. If you don't listen, you're going to be put to death. Okay. It is serious. It's very serious. Now think about 2,000 years of, quote, Christians applying the first part to themselves as if they're the judge and they're the priests and they can determine the word of God, and people come to them and they have to obey them. And if they don't, off with their head. And that's where this came from. And they did do it with many millions of people. So this is where this came from. But with the Jews, it's not like that. And I'll show you what I mean. Okay. All right, so this is what we're going to be looking at primarily. There's 3 different things here. It's not one thing, it's 3 things. They will declare to you the word, the judgment. You must do according to the word that they tell you from the place that God has chosen. You must be careful to do according to everything they instruct you. You must do according to the Torah that they instruct you and the judgment they tell you. That last sentence is the 3 things. Do according to everything they instruct you. You must do according to the Torah that they instruct you and the judgment they tell you. These are 3 different things. Most people just lump them all together and go, you need to obey the rabbis. And I know this because there's a guy who I love named Nehemiah Gordon. He's Jewish, Torah scholar, but he's a Karaite Jew. Do you know what a Karaite Jew is? That means they only believe in the Torah. The written Torah, not the, quote, oral Torah, Rabbinic Judaism. And when he talks about this, he always starts with the same story. I was told you do not turn from the right to the right or the left from what your rabbi says. Their word is God. And if they tell you right is left and left is right, you listen to them. And I absolutely reject that. That's what he says. Well, I rejected it too. I think that's insanity. Now I understand it. I really do understand it. And I can teach it. And it's amazing. So I'm going to try to get it across to you as best I can. So it starts with this verse in Psalms. The whole, let me tell you what this is. What this is why should we listen to the rabbis? Because Messianic Jews don't believe in that, right? They do not believe in Rabbinic Judaism. Christians certainly don't believe in Rabbinic Judaism. They hate it. And every time I talk to a Christian, now that we have the internet, every time I talk to a Christian about, quote, Judaism, all I have to do is say the word Judaism. And what do? They bring up these stupid little quotes that Christians put out on the internet. So, is it okay in your mind for a rabbi to say that it's okay for a 60-year-old to marry an 8-year-old? That's disgusting. And they bring up these little snippets that Christians are all over the world preaching now, including some preachers that we like because they really love Israel. But even they do it. Why? Because this has been spewed for 2,000 years. This has been going on for 2,000 years, almost. That quote, Rabbinic Judaism is against Yeshua somehow. So I'm going to try to help us integrate, because we are psychotic. As believers, we are absolutely psychotic. God created an entire system. Along comes this dude Yeshua, and then they get rid of all the Jews and they make them completely separate. Life with Yeshua, somehow completely separate from everything God set up for almost 2,000 years from the time of Abraham. We're psychotic, and we need to integrate our brains and our souls. So that's what I try to help you do. So that whole issue starts from Psalm 115:16. The heavens are the heavens of the Lord. What does that mean?
They belong to him.
Exactly. They belong to him. That's where his stuff is. All of his stuff is in heaven. But the earth, that's our stuff. He has given to the sons of man. All the sons of men, Jews and Gentiles. He gave us the earth stuff. So what is earth stuff? I tried to distill it down to the basics, which is relationships with people, disputes, and judgments, and laws. And that pretty much covers every single thing we do in our world. Does that make sense? He gave that to us. He doesn't get involved in it. Let me say that again. He doesn't get involved in it. It's not his world. This is our world. We have to do it. That's what, quote, Rabbinic Judaism is. He's given all the rules. He's given all the pictures. He's given all the statutes and boundaries. And then he says, now, you go to the judges and figure it out. Why? Because the judges have figured it out. And they'll help you. They'll help you figure it out. Does that make sense so far? Now, this is where all the sages start this argument. That God's in his world, he's in control of it, but he's not in control here. We, as Jews, are in control here to try to get all that stuff he gave us and put it into our world. And if we can't, we're going to be just like the Gentiles. And that's the end of the story. But because we have the rules and we have the judges to help us figure it out, we should be able to implement all that stuff into our world. Yes?
So, to bring heaven to earth?
Yes, to bring heaven to earth. That's exactly right. That's what the purpose of Judaism is, to bring heaven into our world, the kingdom into our world, so we can live like the kingdom. It's, it's really, really tough to do. But this is the work that the sages did.
Where did the feast fall?
You know what? We're going to come across that. Good question. The question is, where do the feasts come into this? We're going to come across that. Okay, so Rashi from the 11th century says, Yamin usmol. You shall not depart from the word which they shall tell you, to the right or to the left. Yamin, to the right, usmol, to the left. Whatever they tell you, whatever, who tells you?
The judge.
The judges or
The priests.
the priests. The priest or the judges, whatever they tell you, you shall not depart from to the left or to the right. Okay, now, by the way, there are pages and pages and pages and pages of discussion on that one little phrase. You shall not depart from the right or the left of what they tell you. So I'm just starting at the very, very beginning. Even if he, the judge, tells you about what appears to you to be right, that it's left. Or what appears to you to be left that's right. You have to listen to him. How much more is this so if he tells you about what is evidently right, that it's right, and what is evidently left is left? You understand so far?
Can you give an example?
Oh yeah, you're going to have a bunch of examples. We're going to come across them. In fact, we're going to get very deep into what he's saying so we can pick it apart and really understand what he's saying. Okay? I'm going to do my best. Look what it says, and this is, by the way, how it's written in Rashi's hand. Shema lachem. What does that mean? Shema lahem.
Listen to them.
Listen to them. That's how Rashi writes it, with an exclamation mark. Listen to them. Okay. Now remember, he's writing to Jews who know Judaism. If you don't know Judaism, you're lost. You're like, that's stupid. That is somebody trying to put me under their thumb. Okay. That's the starting point. So that's why I have this picture here. God is handing down his ways, his rules, his world down to the people on earth. But he didn't give it to everybody. He only gave it to Israel. So then we got to ask, okay, well, who are the priests and judges? You shall come to the Levitical priests or the judge who is in those days. This is a really important phrase. In what days? He says, when you come into the land, this is what you're going to do. So you shall come to the Levitical priest or the judge who is in those days. In what days?
The days that they're in the land.
In the days where, whatever they are in, wherever they are. How about after the exile of Babylon?
Yeah.
Does it still apply? How about nowadays in the exile of Rome? Does it still apply? How about in the Christian world in Europe in 1527? Does it apply? Yes. Okay, so this is the big question. When it says in those days, this means forever, which means God has got to give, he's got to give that Torah to the next generation and the next generation and the next generation forever, or else we are up a creek. Does that make sense? So, Mishnah Avot 1:1, you should know this by heart. This is how Mishnah Avot, the sayings of the fathers, begins. 1:1. Moshe received the Torah at Sinai, handed it down to Joshua, Joshua to the elders to the prophets to the men of the great assembly. Well, the men of the great assembly was during Second Temple times, during the time of Ezra, Nehemiah, etc. That means that the Torah was passed down in an unbroken chain all the way to at least the first century, because the men of the Great Assembly were there in the first century. And here's some of them. Nehemiah 8 names some of the members of the Anshe men, Knesset, gathering, Gedolah, the great gathering, the great assembly. Nehemiah, Ezra, Haggai, the prophet Haggai, the prophet Zechariah, Zerubbabel. Do you know who that was? The guy who built the second temple, the governor of Judah. Yeshua, the high priest. Yeshua, the high priest. Malachi, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, Mordecai. And the very, very last one, the men of the great assembly, was Shimon HaTzadik, Simon the righteous, who was the high priest during the very, very last member of the men of the great assembly. So what does that mean? That means the men of the great assembly stopped, doesn't it? All it did was change. What did it become? Starts with an S. Sanhedrin. That's the Sanhedrin. So the Sanhedrin is like the generation after the men of the Great Assembly. Simon HaTzadik, he was like the bridge between the men of the Great Assembly and the Sanhedrin, you're not going to believe what I'm about to show you about the Sanhedrin in a little bit. It's mind-blowing. And I never thought about it, even though I've read it 1,000 times. It is mind-blowing how God kept this continuity going. You with me so far? So what happened when Yeshua came? Temple's destroyed 40 years after his death. What happened? What happened to the Sanhedrin? All the Jews in Jerusalem were murdered. So what happened to the Sanhedrin?
I think they went away.
Huh?
I think they went away.
Okay, so this is what we're going to talk about in a bit.
But I'm not positive.
Okay, so these are the things that the quote rabbis, I don't like the phrase rabbis, I really don't, because of what Christianity has done to it. I love rabbi, I love the concept, I love when I had a rabbi, I loved it. I just love the whole idea that God created rabbis. But it has become something that I don't like at all to read about or think about because of what Christianity has done to it. But this is what the men of the Great Assembly and afterwards the rabbis dealt with. Number one, it's all based on the Torah was given to Moshe. Who did Moshe give it to? Come on.
Joshua.
Joshua gave it to? Huh?
Prophets?
Nope. You forgot already.
Tribe leaders.
Elders. You're close. All right, elders gave it to? Prophets gave it to? Men of the Great Assembly. Let's do that again. Moses gave it to? Joshua gave it to? Elders gave it to? Prophets gave it to? Men of the Great Assembly. All right. That's number one. Torah was given to Moshe. Now, because Torah was given to Moshe, number two, rulings that we can extrapolate, that means pull out of Torah. Rulings that we can pull out of Torah. Again, I don't like the word rulings. All it means is like how you do stuff. How do you do stuff? And number three, rulings from the sages or rabbis that are additional, badly called Rabbinic Judaism. This is where everybody falls down. It's not Rabbinic Judaism. It's what was being done all the way since Moses and Joshua and the elders and the prophets and the men of the Great Assembly. Just continued. There was always rulings from the sages and rabbis. And those rulings are two. Number one, takana. You know the word tikkun? What does tikkun mean? Repair. To tikkun, to deal with or to repair what we haven't dealt with. So if you got a problem in your life and you've exhausted all the possibilities that you know of, you need a tikkun. You need a ruling that you don't know to solve the problem. Okay, the sages have given those. And they're still giving those today. Yes? Okay. Number two, gezerah. That means a fence. A fence around a mitzvah. These are all the verses in the Bible that says, shomru. You shall be careful to guard, against whatever. You shall be careful to do this. You shall be careful not to do that. Well, how do you do that? You build a fence around it so you can't even get close to breaking it. Does that make sense? Now, not eating milk and meat is a gezerah. It's a fence. Not eating milk and meat together is a gezerah. It's not a takana. It's not a straight up ruling to help you deal with something. It's a fence. Now, also, for a gezerah to be figured out and disseminated, number one, you have to have chachamim, sages. Why?
To give it.
Well, why can't somebody else give it?
Because it might be the wrong picture.
Might be the wrong picture. Why else?
The Torah wasn't given to anybody.
Okay, that's not too bad, but how about this? You ain't Rashi, baby. That's what Rabbi Anava says all the time. You're not Rashi. And it's so simple. Look, we don't know enough. We got to go to those who know, and those who know are the sages. They've already done it. Why reinvent the wheel? Now, these sages are called, you'll read about them being called Chazal. It'll say, the Chazal say, Chazal is an acronym, Chazal. Chachamim, wise men, Zikronam, their memory, Livrecha, a blessing. May they, be of blessed memory. The Chachamim of blessed memory. That's what Chazal means. Got it? So if you're reading the Chazal tell us this and that, you know who they're talking about. Yes? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Number two, for there to be a Gezerah, there has to be a Sanhedrin of 71 judges. Now, it's 70, really, but why is there one extra?
It's the Torah.
Break the tie.
To break the tie. Yeah, you might have 30, what's half of 75? 35? You might have 35
Yes.
say yes and 35 say no. But then what do? You got to have a tiebreaker. Okay. So I have this picture here of all the, you know what this is? This is a yeshiva from the Middle Ages, is what that is. But it's basically, a yeshiva is just a miniature Sanhedrin. And that's how all the information gets disseminated down from Moses to Joshua, to the elders, to the prophets, to the men of the Great Assembly, to the Sanhedrin, to the rabbis. To the rabbis. That's why we can trust the rabbis. That's why we can trust the rabbis. That's why. Because they've been doing this for 3,500 years. They've been doing this. Now, after the time of the men of the Great Assembly, about 2,000 years ago, they kept doing this. And they wrote it down. And when they wrote it down, that was called the Mishnah. The Mishnah, the how-to book. How do you do it? What's right? What's wrong? What do you do? What do you not do? Who can do it? Who can't do it? Okay? That's the Mishnah. And it came from the sages who wrote it down, and then all the rabbis started working with it. Working with it. Not regurgitating it. Working with it. Arguing about it. And coming to decisions. Why? Those words. In those days. Because the rabbis didn't live 2,000, 3,000 years ago. They live in our time. In Germany in the 1500s. In Rome in the year 172. Right? And in those days, the rabbis then work with it, wrestle with it, and come up with a takana, a gezerah, or just a ruling. And that's how it's all disseminated down. Now, if you can understand everything on this page, it should take away all your fears of Rabbinic Judaism. I'm going to show you a lot more, believe me. But this is the page that really helps us get a hold of this idea that God set this up. He set up Rabbinic Judaism. It's not just a bunch of stuff said by some guys. It is what God gave to Moses straight up. And I mean even the arguments between Hillel and Shammai. That Moses was given that. He just didn't know it until it was revealed later when Hillel and Shammai started arguing. Okay? This is what Judaism teaches. All right, that's the foundation. That's the foundation. That's the beginning. Now, if you can get a hold of that, the rest is pretty easy. Is there too much glare, or is it okay? Okay.
Fine.
Now, I have a long quote from Al-Sheikh. This is from the 16th century. I don't have a whole lot of quotes this week. I got a couple, and they're both long. And the reason is, we really need to figure this issue out to be able to talk about it reasonably and rationally and spiritually. Now, for those of you who you're hearing me on YouTube, on the video, I was asked a question by somebody in the congregation this morning about a job. And I said, give me a while, let me think about it. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to ask the sages and see if I can get an answer, which means I got to study. Before I give this person an answer, I got to know my stuff. I could say what I know, but I might be wrong. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask those who do know, which is the sages. Now in the church, what would I do? Let me pray unto the Holy Spirit. I know the answer. And then done and done. But I might have to counsel with some wise people. So let me get my board together, and I shall counsel with them and get wisdom. For there is wisdom in many counselors. And it's all the same merry-go-round. It never ends because there's no foundation starting with this. God gave it all to Moses, who passed it all down. All right. So, Al-Sheikh is in the 16th century. So there's been a long time of working with this information and studying the texts to come up with a very good analysis of what's going on here. And Al-Sheikh does an absolutely amazing job. By the way, Al-Sheikh is all in Hebrew. There's no English. So I had to translate it. According to the Torah, etc. Up to this point, he was speaking about a matter in which there's something puzzling. So what he's doing, he's referring back to the Torah portion. When it says when you come, if you have something you got to get a decision on, it has to be according to Torah. And so that's what he's talking about, according to the Torah. Up to this point, he was speaking about a matter in which there's something puzzling concerning the law. And the people go to the great Sanhedrin to ask for a ruling according to the Torah, etc. Don't think that the people of the Sanhedrin, are the ones speaking. Why?
They're reading the sages.
Right. Rather, know that the Torah itself is speaking. Now, he's got to back that up. He can't just say that, because that's what they say in the church. This is not my words, this is the words of God. Who says? So he's going to back it up and show us how we can know this. Rather, know that the Torah itself is speaking. Thus, according to the Torah, which they shall teach you, that you shall do. Means that you should act according to the Torah and not merely according to their authority, just because they said it. Because they are agents, shaliach, agents of God carrying out his Torah. Therefore, you shall not turn aside from the word right or left. And what did our sages say? Even if they tell you that right is left and left is right. The verse could properly have said, you shall not turn aside, right or left, from the matter that they tell you. But does it say that? What does it say? You shall not turn aside, right or left from what? From the Torah that they tell you or they teach you. Not their word, the Torah that they teach you. The Torah that the sages teach us. Does that make sense?
Yes and no. Because
Okay, where are you trapped?
So how do you know that they are really following the Torah? and they're not.
Yes, of course,
following
that is
following their own,
exactly. That's how you know. That's why I'm saying you've got to really believe the foundational thing. If you don't, it all falls apart.
But even Moshe said the kings need to be careful not to accept a bribe.
Yeah, that's in the Torah that he passed down.
Right, but Yeshua did confront them for 20 positions of higher place.
Okay, do you see what you just did?
Right.
You just left the foundation and said, yeah, but Yeshua, okay, don't get nervous. I'm going to explain. You left the foundational thing and immediately built something later on top of it like it fits, and it doesn't. Yeshua rebuked Jews for what?
Not following the Torah.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right, but that,
Hold on, just keep it at that level for now. Exactly right.
Okay.
He rebuked Jews for not keeping Torah, right? Guess what the sages did? Rebuke Jews for not keeping Torah.
Same thing.
This is the bottom line. And if it's not the bottom line, that it came down in an unbroken chain to where you get down to the men of the great assembly and then the Sanhedrin, it all falls apart. And you can go, yeah, but they. And this is what I'm trying to tell you. There is no yeah, but they. And that's what he's trying to show us how we can know that. So as we get deeper into it, listen, as we get deeper into it, if it doesn't click for you, let me know, and I'll try something else. Okay? Okay, I didn't get a response. Does that make sense?
yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of a lot of things
Okay.
in Scripture that I'm seeing.
Okay, you gotta pull back.
That although this is what they're supposed to do, sometimes they fall away. So
That's not for you to say. That's not for you to say. That the sages fall away sometimes. Excuse me. That's for you to say?
no, it's what I've read in
Yeshua never said that, not one single time.
Tanakh. I've read it in the
You've never read it in the Tanakh that the sages fell away. Never.
Some people did, but they weren't the
The
sages.
kings were part of
The
that.
kings were not the sages. Absolutely not.
Definitely.
There was one particular priest that did something wrong. I have to go back and find.
Oh, there was more than one particular priest that did something wrong. But they weren't the sages. Those priests were not the sages. Those priests were fools. I can name a whole bunch of them that were priests.
Okay, I'm trying to balance that in my head.
Okay, here's the problem. You can't. You're not Rashi.
So I just to me that's just like blindly just you tell me that this is what the Torah says and I'm going to
Hold on. I am going to prove my point. Hey, we're going to walk through this carefully because they need to prove the point to me for me to believe this.
Okay.
And if I get it and I can make it understandable, I can get it to you. But if it doesn't make sense to me and I don't buy it, I ain't going to tell you. I got this figured out. It makes sense to me. And I can show how it works. So you're going to have to pull on your reins. Everybody does. We all got to do the same thing. Pull in your reins. We are not Rashi. We don't know anywhere near enough to figure this stuff out. We have to go to somebody who knows. So I think Al-Sheikh is really doing a good job if you can follow it.
I think the difficulty she has is that a couple pages before it says, go to the priests and the judges.
Yeah.
And yet we know for a fact that many of the priests were way out of line.
Yeah.
And so there's the conflict.
Well, they weren't the ones you go to.
How do you
So I don't know.
Really? You can't-
pick and choose which priests we go to?
Because if they're not-
decide which ones.
Hold on.
Answer.
Because if the Jew ain't doing Torah, what's going to happen to him? Afuera. You're out. And that's what they did to the priests who didn't do Torah.
Okay.
You've got 1,000 safeguards. 1,000 safeguards in Judaism that you don't know about because you didn't live it.
Right.
So you got to, at some point, you got to trust that God knows what he's doing here.
Well, there's got to be something to correct it, because on the surface it's like, wait a minute. I mean, you see.
Of course.
Yeah, okay.
And I had, like I told you, I had the same thoughts.
Right, like in Ezekiel, God says, let me show you what they're
Yeah.
doing. And it's
Right.
like, come call, you know.
I'm not going to them for an answer.
Yeah.
Yes, and what did Ezekiel do? Go, hi guys, oh, let's just party together.
Right.
Let's worship the Lord together. No, they were destroyed. So, you know, there's many, many safeguards and guards and gazerim, fences around this stuff.
Okay.
It's all built in. Maybe he'll say more about that. Okay, so I'm going to back up a little bit. According to the Torah, don't think that they're the ones speaking. Rather, know that the Torah itself is speaking. Why? Because it was passed down. Thus, according to the Torah that they teach you, not that somebody else teaches you, that they teach you, that's what you should do. Means you should act according to the Torah, not merely according to their authority, and that's what's bothering you, right?
Yeah, that right there.
Yeah, exactly. You don't act according to they're priests, so I got to listen to them. That's nonsense. If they're teaching you Torah, and it's like in that continuity, and it all matches with continuity for the since Moses, you're good. You're good. Because they're agents of God carrying out His Torah. They're doing it. So you can trust them. You walk into the holy place and you got a bunch of priests worshiping Tammuz, facing the sun, having an orgy. They ain't doing Torah. You don't listen to them. Therefore, you shall not turn aside from the word, right or left. And what did our sages say? Even if they tell you that right is left and left is right. The verse, now look, this is what really did it for me. The verse could have said, you shall not turn aside right or left from the matter they tell you. But it doesn't say that. What does it say? The Torah they teach you. You see how there's a guard there? Yeah. It's not what they say. It's that Torah is coming out of them. But when the words right and left are placed in connection with their declaration, this suggests that what they declare itself may be right and left. That is, they might declare right to be left or vice versa. So it's very clearly guarded and protected that it's the Torah they teach you, not their word of whatever they think.
And so how were the people to determine if what they were teaching you was Torah or not?
Do the Torah. Okay, so now we're back to the very, very, very beginning of the verse that we started reading in the Torah portion, where the Gentiles applied it to themselves, right? Like, you shall go to the judge in those days.
Yeah, see, I would not trust that because they were really corrupt.
Yes, but here's the point. You're in Israel. You're in the community. You're a Jew or a Gentile doing Judaism. So you immediately know if that matches the right thing or not. Now, but the subtleties is where we need an answer. Right. And that's what they can help us with. Because you're on the basketball team playing by the rules. They're on the same team playing by the rules. So if they break the rules, what do you do? Right. Right. But if there's a foul and you don't quite know what's right or wrong, what do? Call the ref. That's the sages. All right, so it's divided into three parts. The matter or the thing which they teach you. Number 2, the judgment that they tell you. That's different. And number 3, the thing which they declare to you, which is also different from the first two. First, that which they teach on the basis of the Torah. All teachings that explain the Torah on the basis of its interpretive principles. You play by the rules of the game. If they're playing by the rules of the game and they know the game better than you, you go ask them about the game. Make sense? There are interpretive principles at work here that you have to follow, and they have to follow. This is what is meant by according to the Torah that they teach you. They're informing us of the meaning of the Torah. Simple. That makes sense? Okay, that's number one. Second, matters don't depend on interpreting the Torah itself, but rather are laws derived through the Torah's interpretive principles, where the legal ruling can differ depending on whether it's derived in one way or another. Regarding these, it says, and according to the mishpat, the judgment that they tell you. All right, so you come to me and you say, Doug, I think he hit my car with his car. And Doug's like, I never hit your car with my car. And you're like, yeah, but I've got a witness. Okay, who's your witness? That guy is half blind. And it goes on and on and on in the case, right?
And he's drunk.
And he's drunk. So you come up with you present your case, and I may make a judgment one way, but Eileen might make a judgment another way. This is how the, quote, oral law, the Torah from given to Moses from the mouth, Torah al peh, this is how it works. You have to fight it out. You got to have more than one voice. In fact, 70 voices.
71.
Sometime. No, 70 voices, and then that last one is a tiebreaker. But it might come to that. You might come to 70 different voices to make a judgment. You don't know. But at least 2, at least 3 for a tiebreaker. And that, you know what? That's said for a reason. Say that again.
2 rabbis, 3 opinions.
Okay. So every single congregation is supposed to have a beit din. A beit din means a house of judgment. That means 3 judges who can make a judgment. But why do you have 3?
Break the tie.
Break the tie, right. So you got 2 judges with 3 opinions because you got that tiebreaker. And every congregation is supposed to have that. Why? Because it's in your world, in your days. You got to have people who can fight it out in your days. Does that make sense? Well, how are we going to have that? Moses to Joshua, to the elders, to the prophets, to the men of the great Sanhedrin who wrote it down and then disseminated it to the Sanhedrin and the rabbis. That's how. Okay, so he says, where the legal ruling can differ depending on whether it's derived in one way or another. And he says a lot more there that I cut out. Regarding these, it says, and according to the judgment that they tell you. You got to make a judgment. These are not explanations of the meaning of the Torah. Rather, they themselves tell you that the law is such and such.
How to apply it.
How to apply it, right. So this is a little bit different from the first one, isn't it? Now, they're saying, no, the Torah is giving us the boundaries and the determination of what to do. And here's what it is. All right. Third, matters that constitute halakha leMoshe miSinai. Laws transmitted orally to Moses at Sinai. Regarding these, it says, you shall not turn aside from the thing which they shall declare to you. Who's the they that are doing the declaring?
The priests and judges.
The priests and judges. They're merely declaring what was transmitted. They're not their words. Whose words are they?
Okay.
God's to Moses. Moses to Joshua. Joshua to elders. Elders to prophets. Prophets to men of the great Sanhedrin. The great assembly and the Sanhedrin. Okay? They're just declaring what was said to Moses. And it says, you shall not turn aside from the matter which they shall declare to you. They're merely declaring what was transmitted, rather than creating or deriving something new for our day, for our generation. It is regarded, this third category, that they needed to say that you shall do, even if they tell you that right is left. So that thing that Rashi said, even if they tell you that right is left and left is right, this is what it's applying to. This is what that's about. You know, because you got to make a judgment. And you got to wrestle it out. And you ain't Rashi, baby. They know, you don't. Now, this is the whole problem with Christianity. There's no central authority. There's no central voice that says what's right and what's wrong. In our life. In our life, they don't say. They just give laws like the head of a church shall not be married to more than one woman and shall not have rebellious children, or something like that. That doesn't help us at all. We need a word for our life right now. And it was all given to Moses. And it was all transferred down. And they fought it out tooth and nail until they wrote it down. When they wrote it down, what was it called? Mishnah. Okay. For regarding the first two categories, their words are comprehensible. You can figure it out, and it's supported by proofs, inferences, sound reasons. But regarding something that has no reason apparent to human intellect, like what? Give me an example. Red heifer.
Oh, yeah.
Remember all the mitzvot that we can't figure out with our brain? What are they called? Chok. Very good. Or the heel. All those little ones you can't figure out, right? Why don't we take the eggs from a nest without shooing? We got to shoo the mother bird away. Who cares? Okay, these are the mother bird, right? These are the small ones that there's no logical reason for. They're all pictures that we can figure out, but there's no logical reason for them. There's no reason apparent to the human intellect being a halakha l'Moshe Misayin. In other words, without an identifiable rationale, the strangeness of the matter may become so great to the human intellect that it reaches the point of feeling that one is being told that right is left and left is right. That makes no sense. It's counterintuitive. Why are you telling me that, sage? You're telling me that is the right way to go? It seems weird to me. That's what he's talking about. Even if they say right is left and left is right, listen to them. Shema lahem. Because they've already heard it from Moses to Joshua to the elders to the prophets to the men of the great Sanhedrin, to them. They've heard it. That is precisely when they attribute it to being halakha l'Moshe Misinai. Therefore, it's specifically concerning this category that the Torah needed to use such an emphatic formulation telling us to uphold it. Shema lachem. Listen to them. Okay, does that make sense or no? Okay, no fuzziness? You're all right? Okay. I mean, I thought he did a masterful job. I obviously cut some out of it, but I think he did a masterful job of explaining this. I can understand it. And if I can understand it, just about anybody can understand it. Okay. I don't really like showing this picture. And I haven't done it much. I did it 2 years ago when I taught at Shoftim. The reason I have this here is for a reason. It's a good reason. The good reason is this. Messianic Jews do not believe that there are chachamim. They believe that the Holy Spirit has replaced the chachamim. And so no rabbi would call himself a chacham, a wise man, a wise one. That ended with the Sanhedrin. There's no more chachamim. There's just rabbis, teachers, but no chachamim. Well, I have proof, written proof, visual proof that that is not true. This is a picture of my great-great-grandfather, Moshe Warshawski. This is about 1890. And when he came into America, you know, you have to write your job. I work in lithography. I'm a boatswain. I work on boats. He wrote Chacham. What does that mean?
A wise one.
Why would he put sage?
Apparently that was
Because that's what a rabbi is. Moses to Joshua, to the elders, to the prophets, to the men of the great assembly, to the Sanhedrin, to the rabbis, which are chachamim. They are the chachamim. They're the sages. The rabbis are the sages after the Sanhedrin. And actually during the Sanhedrin too. Okay, so this is, I mean, Jews look at that and go, okay, cool. Gentiles look and go, oh, how arrogant.
said who?
Says who? You're a wise one? Who are you? Jew? But Jews look at this and go, yeah, he's a rabbi. He's a chacham, a wise one. Because he has that long, unbroken, continuous chain. All right. Now we're going to bring Yeshua in. This is about the continuity of the chain of authority. Again, I had this, well, at least I had this one. Didn't have this one 2 years ago in Shoftim. Deuteronomy 17:9, the judge who shall be in those times, whatever the times are, whatever the generation is. Deuteronomy 17:11, according to the Torah, they instruct you, and the judgment they say to you, you shall do. You shall not divert from the word they tell you, either right or left. Even if to you it seems like it's left, but they're saying it's right. And to you, because you're so ignorant, you think it's left, but they're saying it's right, or they're saying it's left, and you think it's right. It's because you're ignorant, that's all. We're ignorant. They're not.
I ain't Russian.
Now, Matthew quoted Deuteronomy 17. He quoted it. And he said, Yeshua spoke to the crowds. Who are the crowds?
The people that were following.
Who was that?
There's his disciples, but
Is it Jews or Gentiles?
it was Jews.
Okay, but there are some Gentiles that are...
Mostly Jews.
Is absolutely mostly Jews, but there are some Gentiles, just like it had always been. You got the camp of Israel. Gentiles have always been part of it. Mostly Jews. And he spoke to them and to his Talmidim. Both. And to both groups, he says, the scribes. Now, a scribe is a sofer in Hebrew, which means, the one who writes the Torah. Writing the Torah is not writing the Torah. Writing the Torah is knowing the Torah to the letter. How many letters are there in the Torah? Do you know? Letters.
26.
No, letters, like in the whole Torah.
Thousands.
Over 1 million. There's over 1 million letters in the Torah scroll. Like written letters. Like words made out of letters. There's over 1 million letters in that Torah scroll right behind you. Okay, to be a scribe, you have to know every one of those letters, so you don't make a mistake. That's what a scribe is. What is that? That's a sage. That's a chacham.
And that's what the king was supposed to do
Actually, everybody. It says every Jew shall have shall write a Torah scroll. You didn't know that? Yeah. Not just the king. Every Jew. So in Matthew 23, Yeshua speaks to all of the crowds, whoever's there in Israel, and to his Talmidim, and he says, the scribes, that's the sages and rabbis, the men of the great assembly, and the Pharisees. Yeshua was a Pharisee, wasn't he? Have seated themselves in Hakise Moshe, in the seat of Moshe. Now Gentiles read that and go, oh, how arrogant that they have put themselves in that seat of Moses. Is that true? They have put themselves there. How did they do that?
Study.
Like, how do you choose who's the rabbi in your community? How do you choose?
I think the other rabbis choose.
Well, think about it. Think about it for a minute. How do you choose who's the chacham And who knows more than somebody else? How do you choose?
It was available and you didn't.
Now you got to see what they say, don't you? You got to quiz them. You got to listen to them. You got to follow them. You got to figure out what they know and what they don't know, right? And then the community goes, "You're our rabbi." And then the other sages go, "Yes, he has our authority. He has the authority from us." And it's all that same chain of authority. It's all totally unbroken, totally smoothly connected. So it's not really true that they put themselves in the seat. At least they did put themselves in the seat because God told them to. But it's not like Americans would say they put themselves in the seat of Moses. But I've heard Christians teach it like that many, many, many times.
They didn't usurp the authority to be there.
They didn't usurp the authority to be there. They put themselves there because God said, "Put for yourselves judges and priests." Yes? Okay, so that means in the synagogue, there was a kisei Moshe, where the darshan, that means the preacher or the teller, would tell and preach. So what position is he in while he's teaching? Seated. How is everybody else?
Standing.
Why do you say they're standing?
That's what I was taught.
It's correct. And the reason is that at Mount Sinai, what position were we in? It's called Ha'amad Har Sinai, the stand at Mount Sinai. We were all standing. And then in Nitzavim, he says, "You all stand here today." Remember? In Nitzavim, the children, the wood choppers, the water drawers, everybody, the men, the women, the children, everybody. You all stand here today. And you stood at Sinai. So that's how it used to be. The darshan would sit and the people would stand to learn at his feet. Okay?
The opposite of what goes on.
The opposite of how we do it now. But then Yeshua quotes this verse and he says, "So whatever they tell you, do." Yeah, but they sat themselves in the seat of Moses. Okay, fine. They sat themselves in the seat of Moses. Whatever they tell you, do it. You see the disconnect there? If Yeshua was saying it like they have set themselves in the seat of Moses, he certainly wouldn't turn around and say, "Now do whatever they tell you and whatever they teach you." Whatever they tell you, do and comply with all of it. Now what's he saying there? You shall not divert from the right or the left. Comply with all of it.
Not again.
Exactly. This one is the one I had last year, 2 years ago. It's from Kfar Nahum, Capernaum, in the synagogue there. This is from Greece, the synagogue in Delos, on the island of Delos in Greece. And they even had a Kisei Moshe. So what are they saying? They're saying, I've got all the way from Moses backing me. So I know what I'm saying is right. I know it is. You don't have to be afraid. I know what I'm saying is right. I got Moses to Joshua, to the elders, to the prophets, to the men of the great assembly, the Sanhedrin, and now me. So why are you afraid? I'm teaching you Torah. Isn't that amazing? That is, I'm getting chills. That is an incredible amount of safeguards.
Quite unique.
Yes, quite unique. I like the way you put that. All right. Okay, now I'm going to show you something that it blew me away. I never stopped to think about it. It's just amazing to me. And it's this. I was thinking about what happened to the Sanhedrin when the temple was destroyed. I didn't really know. I knew the Jews were dispersed all over the place, and most of the Jews went to Babylon, started academies there, but that's all I knew. I was wrong. Okay. The office of Nasi that means prince, also had the title Rabban, our master, and was used to distinguish the Nasi from all other rabbis. He was head or president of the Sanhedrin. The first Nasi was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Okay? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. He was a disciple of Hillel. After whom Rabban Gamaliel, a grandson of Hillel, served as Nasi. Nasi over what? What's the Nasi? What's he over? The Sanhedrin. Gamaliel, the one in the Bible in the New Testament, was the head of the Sanhedrin. And who did he teach? Shaul. Paul. I didn't know he was the head of the Sanhedrin. Do you see what I'm saying to you?
Yeah.
We have an unbroken chain of authority that goes definitely all the way to Gamaliel and might go to Shaul.
Probably Yeshua too.
Who wrote most of the New Testament? Shaul. So I'm like, oh my God, it's just blowing all my circuits. I never stopped to think about this. So I'm like, who? I thought I knew who Gamaliel was. I don't know who Gamaliel is. So I went and I looked it up, and this is what I found. There was a whole bunch of Gamaliels.
Is he in the Jewish Encyclopedia?
Oh, yeah. So, look at this. After whom Rabban Gamaliel, grandson of Hillel, served as Nasi. The office became hereditary, held by Gamaliel's descendants. The Sanhedrin was led by Gamaliel and then after him by all of his descendants until it was no more. Do you see what I'm telling you?
Yeah.
How unbroken and clear this chain of authority is? So, number one, the first one is Rabban Gamaliel, the elder, the Hazaken, the elder. Gamaliel 1. The second third of the first century during the destruction. He was also the head during the destruction. Okay, when did Shaul start believing in Yeshua? Around what year? Yeshua died in the year 30, just about. So when did Shaul start his thing?
36.
You don't know?
I remember.
Okay, it says he got born again. He saw Yeshua, he got born again early on, about 34, 35. And then it says in Galatians, he went off for 13 years to study. And then he came back and started his thing. So what year are we in? 40s, 50s at the latest, right? That's during Gamaliel's head of the Sanhedrin. This was his teacher. So who do you think he went to study with for those 13 years?
Probably Gamaliel.
Probably Gamaliel. That's his boy. And then Gamaliel had a son named Simeon. And then Simeon had a son named Gamaliel of Yavne. Now Yavne was the first real yeshiva. This. Yavne was where all the sages went because they couldn't be in Jerusalem anymore. Yavne. And Gamaliel was the one who brought them to Yavne. Gamaliel 1. Our boy. Gamaliel number 1. He was the one who brought them to Yavne. So his grandson, Gamaliel II, he now lives in Yavne and he becomes the head. And then number 4, Rabban Simeon, another Simeon, Simeon ben Gamaliel II. And then after him, his son, Rabbi Judah the Prince. Who is that? The one who edited the Mishnah. The one who pulled the Mishnah together. Is Gamliel's great-great-grandson. Wow. I didn't know any of this. I didn't know any of this. He's the one who pulled together the Mishnah. Do you see what I'm saying about this unbroken chain of authority?
Yeah.
It is so clearly unbroken. Now, Gentiles look at this and go, it's like the mafia. It's just family and control, the whole deal. And they never let go of their power. I look at it, I'm like, oh my God, did you keep this together beautifully? Because the church preaches this narrative that Christ came and all of a sudden the Jews and Judaism was kind of just blasted apart, dispersed, gone, and Christianity just replaced it. And Jews, what about the Jews? Well, they're not really anything anymore. That's why I love this so much, because it's so clearly keeping the story together. Editor of the Mishnah. And he had a son named, of course, Gamliel III. And then there's two more, another Simeon and another Gamliel. And then Gamliel the sixth died in 426. He was the last one, after which the office of Nasi, which means the Sanhedrin, is no more. They did. The Jews did. That's the question. What do you think? Why?
Probably too much pressure from the Jews.
No, not at all.
All the arguments have been answered.
Say it again.
All the arguments have been answered.
No. Because, hold on. Because remember, God said, you shall do this in your generation. So it's got to keep going. So why did they abolish the Sanhedrin? What comes after the Sanhedrin? The rabbis. So what they did was, all they did was move to Babylon. They moved the great academy to Babylon. So what does that mean? It means this. We have two Talmuds.
Right.
We have two Talmud and Jerusalem. Israeli. We have, they call it Jerusalem. We have the Jerusalem Talmud, which came first, or Israeli Talmud, and the Babylonian Talmud. Babylonian Talmud is much, 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 much bigger. The Israeli Talmud, where was that? Yavne. That was in Yavne.
Where is Yavne?
It's up in northern Israel. It's right. It's around Caesarea, around there. So Gamliel is the one who started all this stuff. He said, let's leave Jerusalem. There's nothing for us here anymore. He actually kept a good relationship with the Romans, moved all the Jews up to Yavne, kept them from being murdered, and they kept the yeshiva going. And then it was like, okay, there's nothing for us in Israel anymore. We got to get out. So they all moved to Babylon, where the rest of the Jews were, and they continued learning and teaching and disseminating Judaism from Babylon. Totally unbroken. I'm sorry I didn't know this before, but I know it now. All right, so here's a couple little statements from or about Gamaliel. Jewish Spiritual Heroes, Volume 1, the creators of the Mishnah, Rabbi Gamliel the Elder, verse 27. That's a lot. That's the name of the chapter. It also seems certain that the Great Academy of Jerusalem was transferred to Yavne during the time of Rabbi Gamliel. In Yavne, it remained for many years after the destruction of the temple with the permission of the Roman government. And we know it's all the way to 426. Talmud Beitzah 22b-9. Rabban Gamliel also said three things as leniencies in opposition to the view of most of the sages. So who do we go with? Do we go with what Gamliel says or what the sages said? Okay, there's thousands of these things in the Talmud
Right.
where one rabbi will say something like Hillel or somebody will say something and the majority of the sages disagree. Who do you go with? The Talmud will always tell you, this is who we're going with. In this case, they went with Gamliel against 70 other sages, 69 other sages. You get what I'm saying? They had to wrestle things out. Mishnah, Rosh Hashanah 2:8. I love, love, love this. I'm going to talk about this a little bit. Rabban Gamliel had a diagram, a picture of the different forms of the moon drawn on a tablet that hung on the wall of his upper chamber. They have attic here, but it's his upper chamber, which he would show to the layman who came to testify about the new moon.
What did it look like? Which one?
Now, this little tiny thing blew up into a decade-long incident that changed the entire structure of the Sanhedrin. This one little thing, what Gamliel did. Because Gamliel was the guy for the new moon. He had so much knowledge about the sighting of the new moon that the pairs of witnesses would come and talk to all the sages at the Sanhedrin, and Gamliel would say, no, that's not true. I don't accept your testimony. And the whole of Israel would have to go with Gamliel. Who did he teach? Who was one of his great students? Shaul. About the new moon, about the sighting of the moon, about the timing of the month. You don't think Shaul learned all this? I'll bet you anything that Shaul knew the festivals backwards and forwards. You asked me earlier, how did the festivals fall into this? Okay? This is how. They had to wrestle it out. And there had to be one person with the most knowledge. It happened to be Gamliel. So this is the incident that occurred. And by the way, this is just the very beginning incident. It goes on for, I don't know, I'm going to say maybe 20 pages in all different parts of the Talmud. Because what this led to was the guy who had a different view of Gamliel, Joshua got kicked out by Gamliel. And Gamliel didn't want it to happen. But all the sages said, we got to go with Gamliel. And so there was a big argument. And so Yehoshua got kicked out. And then because Gamliel said some bad things about Yehoshua, which he wasn't trying to hurt his feelings or anything, but he had to say it, then all the sages turned against Gamliel, and they kicked him out of the Sanhedrin. And Gamliel was like, you are right to do so. You're making the right decision. Listen to what I'm saying. This is not like the mafia. Gamliel said, you are right to do so. And he gave all the biblical reasons for it. And then later on, they reinstated Gamliel. And when Gamliel was kicked out, guess who became the head of the Sanhedrin? A 20-year-old kid named Eliezer, Rabbi Eliezer, 20 years old. Became the head of the Sanhedrin. And in order for them to not disrespect him, God turned his hair white overnight so that he would look like he had wisdom, which he did. He very much did. And then he was taken out when they brought Gamliel back in. And so what did they do? They said, Gamliel, you teach Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and, and Eleazar, you teach on the other days. And they kept them both. But it started with this. An incident in which two witnesses came and said, we saw the new moon at its anticipated time on the night of the 30th day of the previous month. However, on the following night, the start of the 31st, we couldn't see it. And nevertheless, Rabbi Gamaliel accepted their testimony and established the new moon on the 30th day. He said, yeah, I accept it. Well, Rabbi Dosa ben Harkanos disagreed and said, they're false witnesses. Now look what he says. How can witnesses testify that a woman gave birth and the next day her belly is between her teeth? That is exactly what most people do. What does that mean? What is that about?
I find it.
Yeah, you're not going to find it. So this tells us something amazing. Why is he saying a pregnant woman giving birth, and how can her belly be between her teeth the next day? What's he saying? Yes, exactly. That the moon is born again. This is why it's called Rosh Chodesh. This is where the phrase born again comes from. Yes? Molad Sheni. So he's just using that picture. But what he says is, she's already given birth. How can her belly be between her teeth? What does that mean? The umbilical cord. In other words, the baby's been born. What, she's been sitting with the umbilical cord in her mouth for a day? You bite that thing off and move on. Baby's born. So that's what Dosa ben Harkanos is saying. If the new moon was already visible at its anticipated time, how could it not be seen a day later? The baby's born. How come you can't see it? I don't buy it, he says. Rabbi Yehoshua. Now here's the guy who all the problems come up with Rabbi Yehoshua. Rabbi Yehoshua said to him, I see the logic of your statement. The new moon must be established a day later. Upon hearing that, Rabbi Yehoshua had challenged his ruling. Rabbi Gamaliel sent a message to him and said, this is like really chutzpahdik. He's really, I don't know. I decree that you must appear before me with your staff and your money on the day that you say is the Day of Atonement. Well, yeah, but he's saying, I want you to appear on the day that you say is Yom Kippur. Don't put your money where your mouth is. Put your money where my mouth is. I'm telling you, it's on the next day. It's on the previous day. You say it's the 10th, Yom Kippur. I say it's the 11th. I say you're safe. I am accepting their testimony, and I'm saying you're safe. So he sent a message. I decree that Rabbi Yehoshua, you must appear with your staff and your money. You got to carry money on Yom Kippur? On the day on which Yom Kippur occurs according to your calculation. According to my calculation, that day is the 11th of Tishri, the day after Yom Kippur. All right, did you follow that so far? Where'd you? Yeah, you know why you lost? Because you've been staring at that. You weren't looking at me, and you lost a lot of the communication I was giving with my eyes. But where are you lost? Where are you lost?
I lost it at the day.
So if the new moon appeared the day before, like the witnesses said, that would mean that Yom Kippur is a day back, right? But the guys are saying, no, you can't be right, Gamaliel. It's the next day. So that pushes it forward a day, okay? So he's saying, you're wrong. It's pushed back a day. So I'm telling you, I want you to come to me with your money and your staff in your hand, which breaks Shabbat, right? Right? On what you think is Shabbat, Yom Kippur, but it's not. It's pushed forward a day. It's actually the 11th. So I'm not making you break Torah. I'm making you break Torah according to your calculations, but not according to my calculations, and I'm pretty good at this stuff. I'm the one who has the pictures of the new moon up on my walls, and the cycle of the moon and how the moon looks. I'm the one who judges the witnesses who come in, not you. You get it? Okay. So he says it's the day that's the 11th of Tishri, the day after Yom Kippur. Then Rabbi Akiva. What relationship is he to Gamliel? You don't remember? It's his grandpa. Remember, Simeon was his son, and Simeon is Gamliel's father. So you have Akiva, Simeon, Gamliel. And then another Simeon, then another Gamliel, then another Simeon, then another Gamliel. Okay? Akiva is grandpa. He's the greatest sage. Rabbi Akiva went and found Rabbi Joshua in distress. He's freaking out. Rabbi Akiva said to him, I can derive that everything Rabban Gamliel has done is valid. Don't worry. He's not setting you up for failure. As it says, these are the appointed seasons of the Lord, whether they're proclaimed at their proper times or other than their proper times, because it says, these are the appointed seasons of the Lord, holy convocations, which you shall proclaim. Not me, not God. God's not saying, I'm telling you when. He's saying, you proclaim when they are. Who's going to proclaim when they are? The judges, the sages. And Gamliel is saying, guy, I'm not setting you up for failure. I'm really pretty good at this stuff, at this new moon stuff. Your calculations aren't quite right. And I'm almost 100% sure I'm right. Akiva goes to Joshua because he's really freaking out. He's like, oh my God, I could go to hell for this. And Akiva tells him, no, God says, you shall proclaim the festivals, not God, when they are. Look at me. Who decides the date of the calendar of when we're going to do Sukkot? Who says what day it's going to be?
Well, we're the ones that see the moon.
And how do you figure out when you're going to do it? Don't you go on the internet and look up a Jewish calendar? Yeah. Okay, so why do we do that? Because they already figured it out. Who figured that out? Who spent 3.5 years on the calendar figuring out what it's going to be, the new moon for the next 2,000 years? The sages. Gamliel was part of that. He was definitely part of that. And the sages did that for us. And they proclaimed it for us. So we can trust the calendar. Now, there's a little bit of variance in it. Sometimes it's off by a day because of the 5-degree kilter in the moon. But, we do what we can. So he says, you shall proclaim them in their appointed seasons, whether they're proclaimed at their proper times or other than their proper time. I have no appointed seasons other than these, other than the ones that the Jews proclaim, that the sages proclaim. You get what I'm saying? We are guarded and guarded and guarded and protected. There's layers and layers and layers of protection for us. We can trust the words of the rabbis. Now, if you still feel like you can't trust the words of the rabbis, you got a lot of Hellenism in there fighting against it. Yeah. Which I understand, but you got to say what's reality. Okay, now look what Joshua says. After Hillel comforting him and telling him this, Rabbi Joshua came to Rabbi Dosa ben Harkanos, who started this whole mishigas in the first place. And look what Joshua says to him. If we examine, If we examine the decisions of the Beit Din of Rabban Gamliel, we have to examine the decisions of every single Beit Din that has existed from the time of Moses to the present. Why? Because it's all been passed down. It's all been passed down. What Moses said, what was said to Moses, has all been passed down. which is why you shall proclaim, not God shall proclaim, because it's all been passed down. I'm doing as good as I can, so I think so far it's pretty clear. Yes? Yes? Okay. We good? All right, now, I just laugh because it's been there the whole time, and I never thought about Gamliel being, I never knew he was the head of the Beit Din, the head of the Sanhedrin, and his family was the head of the Sanhedrin until it was no more. It's just amazing to me. This is why in Acts 5, when they had brought Peter and the other disciples, it doesn't say who, they had them stand before the council. What's the council? The Sanhedrin. And this is in Jerusalem. They were in the temple preaching stuff. And they brought him before the council. So the council in this case is the Sanhedrin. The high priest interrogated them. Can he do that? Absolutely. Peter and the apostles said, we have to listen to God rather than men. That doesn't mean rather than you on the Sanhedrin. It means rather than human beings. So what's the question we got to answer? Do the people on the Sanhedrin have the word of God or the word of human beings? What do you think?
Right.
Now, Christians have read this for 2,000 years going, you see, those Jews on the council are fighting against Peter and his buddies. Not at all. They have to make a judgment. They have to make a judgment. So look what happens. So Peter says, the God of our father raised up Yeshua, whom you put to death by hanging him on wood. True, that's exactly what happened. When they heard, they were infuriated and decided to execute them. Why? What's heresy? What does that mean? What can you be executed for?
For challenging them.
No, you can't be. You cannot be executed for challenging them.
But that's what they're doing.
What can you be executed for by the Sanhedrin? Okay, any offense that is punishable by strangulation, stoning, burning, or beheading. Those are the 4 capital punishments. And those are very, very, very well established. Which one do they think they're breaking? Which one does the Sanhedrin that infuriated them think that these guys are breaking so that they can be receive capital punishment?
They're saying, because they said God, the God of our fathers.
Which sin are they doing that would bring a capital punishment? See, you're still thinking like Christianity has taught us. These Christians come in and they're saying this wonderful stuff, and those evil Jews are saying, it doesn't work that way. There's only punishable by death from there's only 4 capital punishments. What sin is Peter and his buddies doing that is punishable by death?
But they're saying they should listen to God and not to them.
That's not punishable by death. What is?
The right or the left.
See the dots? That's not all Peter said. It's not all that was said here. I couldn't fit it all. But you know the story. What sin are they doing that is punishable by death?
Breaking the Torah.
Like which Torah? Which sin? This one's pretty easy. Idolatry. They're saying, we believe he is Adonai. Right? That's what Peter's saying. I mean, that's what he's preaching. Right?
Right.
Okay. That's idolatry. Until they get the revelation, that's idolatry. And so this isn't like them getting crazy and infuriated and say, kill this jerk. It's not like that. These are people in the Sanhedrin that have to make a judgment. They have to make a decision. And they're infuriated that they are spreading this idolatry in Israel. Simple. And so they're saying, okay, they need to be executed. So what has to happen now? Huh?
The case has to be brought against.
Yeah, there has to be a case. Remember, in blood and blood, case and case, assault and assault, right? So what would this be? This would be blood and blood, murder. Or no, I'm sorry, this would be case and case. Please forgive me. This is about idolatry, case and case. So they're going to have a court case. And they don't say all the words here, but there now has to be a case. And it says, but a Pharisee named Gamliel. We don't know that Gamliel's a Pharisee? He's the head of the Sanhedrin. We don't know he's a Pharisee somehow? Yes or no? Do we know this? Yeah, so then why would it say he's a Pharisee?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to know why it's important for the story, right? What are the two parties?
Oh, the Sadducees.
Right. The Sadducees were the priests, and they were all corrupt. All corrupt. And they're on the Sanhedrin. So what it's saying is, a Republican stood up, and we're all supposed to go, yay! He wasn't one of those liberal Pharisees. That's why it's there. So in other words, this is a guy we can trust. He's not a priest who's been bought off. He's not a Sadducee who don't even believe in spiritual things. He's a Pharisee. He's the Pharisee Gamliel, the head of the Sanhedrin. And the head of the Sanhedrin says, it calls him a teacher of the Torah. So what does that mean? That means that in our Torah portion that we're reading, those three things, right? The three things that you're supposed to listen to them about, he does that. He gives them the Torah from Moshe. He gives them the right interpretation of Torah, and he gives them the Torah that's the judgment. And he can do this. He's a teacher of Torah, respected by all the people. Stood up in the Sanhedrin and gave orders to put the men outside for a short time. And he said to them, men of Israel, be careful. Be careful. Do a gezerah. Put a fence around this. Be careful as to what you're about to do with these men. This requires a gezerah, a fence. And remember I told you gezerah is for all those scriptures that say be careful to whatever. For some time ago, Theudas appeared. A group of about 400 men joined him, but he was killed. Everybody who followed him dispersed, came to nothing. After that, Yehuda of Galilee appeared and drew away some people after him. He perished too. And all those who followed him were scattered. And so, in the present case, I say, stay away from these men and leave them alone. For the source of this plan or movement, if it's from God, if it's from men, it'll be overthrown. But if the source is of God, you won't be able to overthrow it. You may even be found to be fighting against God, and you want to execute these guys? And they might be doing something from God. Now, who are they supposed to listen to? The Sanhedrin. I would listen to the Nasi. I would listen to the one who's over the entire Sanhedrin. And that's what they did. Now, Acts 22. Wait. Think about this. The whole chain of authority comes through Gamliel now. It's all down to Gamliel. And Gamliel is the one who says, don't fight against this Yeshua thing. Isn't that amazing? I mean, it just blew my mind when I saw that.
Yeah, the
wisdom in it, right? I've read this 1,000 times, but I never saw that it was so connected to the past. And it goes through Gamliel. Now, Acts 22:3, Shaul says, I'm a Jew. I was born in Tarsus of Cilicia, but I was brought up in this city, in Jerusalem. That means his entire growing up was in Jerusalem. That's where he's from. Educated at the feet of Gamliel. What does that mean, educated at his feet?
He's in his yeshiva.
That means Gamliel was in the seat, and I was standing at his feet to learn from him. I am one of his Talmidim. So whose Talmid is he? Is he Gamliel's or is he Yeshua's?
Both.
You can be a Talmud of more than one rabbi. That's all right. Yeah, both. Absolutely. You can be the Talmud of many rabbis if you've got the strength for it. Educated at the feet of Gamliel, strictly according to the Torah of our fathers, zealous for God, just like all of you are here today. Now, I got this picture just to show, this is kind of how I picture it. Obviously the Sanhedrin was much, much, much bigger, and it was made out of rocks, not wood. And there's all these rabbis, sages gathered around, and one guy stands up and he says, this is what I believe is the Word, the Torah from God. And guess what they did? All these horrible Jews on the Sanhedrin, guess what they did? They listened to Gamliel. These horrible Jews on the Sanhedrin. People miss that too. And they go, oh, Gamliel saved Peter. No, the Jews on the Sanhedrin listened to the ruling. Do you see what I'm saying? So this is what I came up with. I don't know if it's a good phrase or not, but it made sense to me. Perhaps this is why God chose Shaul, to continue the chain of authority, but including Yeshua in those doctrines. Because this is the head of the Sanhedrin until there is no more Sanhedrin. Him and all his kids. Until the Sanhedrin is no more. And then they all go to Babylon and write the Talmud. So I'm thinking, man, God had his finger on this way, way more than we thought. The only reason I have this, I had this 2 years ago, but is this. Look at the dates. 1st and 2nd century, from 50 to 117, this fool, Ignatius of Antioch, began teaching, quote, Christians should not partake in Passover meals. Yeshua died in 30, and that soon afterwards, the Gentiles were already starting with the anti-Semitism and changing all the doctrines of Judaism. Justin Martyr, from 100 to 106, was claiming that church had replaced Israel. 30 years after the destruction of the temple. So when Christians tell me, oh, the church became Christianity became the religion of Rome in 3 whatever with the Council of Nicaea. No! 200 years before that is when anti-Semitism started entering into the Gentiles. And they started preaching that there's a wedge between the body of Messiah and Judaism. That early. Tertullian, 155 to 230. And other church fathers like Origen, 185 to 254. These fools were calling the Jews Christ killers that early. These evil, hard-hearted, anti-Semitic fools that are called church fathers. Sorry, but that's the truth. And then it just got worse from there. But I wanted those dates to be seen, that it was that early. While Gamliel was keeping the Sanhedrin intact at Yavne, and all of his children keeping Judaism intact at Yavne, this was happening. When you look at the timeline, things look very different, right?
And then they changed the date of Yeshua's resurrection so that we no longer do the
Identified or linked with Passover. It's unbecoming. I didn't want to read these words. They infuriate me. It's unbecoming beyond measure that on this holiest of festival, Easter, we should follow the customs of the Jews. Henceforth, let us have nothing in common with this disgusting people. These fools destroyed the body of Messiah even before it got up on its feet. But we have this long chain of unbroken authority in Judaism. You can trust it. You can't break that, and you can trust it. All right, I just wanted to let you see that again. 3 matters. First, that's what they teach on the basis of the Torah. Simple. Second, matters that don't depend on interpreting the Torah. It just says according to the judgment that they tell you. In other words, stuff that they argue, they figure out, they wrestle with, and they come up with a judgment. And then third, halakha leMoshe misane. God already said it to Moses, and these guys are just saying it. It's trustworthy. So all of this, why did God do this? This is instruction in how to hear the Torah. You know, I talk about it all the time. Hear the Torah, hear the Torah, hear the Torah. Well, how you do it. So how do you do it? Listen to the sages.
Can you give me an example of the second? Matters that do not
depend on interpreting the Torah itself. Yeah, this stuff they have to wrestle with. Like, I'm telling you that you're wrong about the date of the new moon. I'm pushing it forward a day. I'm saying it's back. So I'm going to push it forward a day. You're going to come, on the day that you think is Yom Kippur. But I'm telling you, it's not. We wrestled it out. I'm good at this stuff. I'm making a ruling. Now, all the sages have to either agree with you or with me. And if they agree with you, I won't make you come. And they agreed with Gamliel, and so Joshua had to show up. That's all the thousands of these matters that they had to wrestle out. And the cool thing is, these arguments are in the Talmud. So it's not just one side presented. It's sometimes 3, 4, 5 sides given. 5 different rabbis with 5 different ideas. And then at the end of it, they go, that's the right one. That's what we're going with. And here's why. And they give it all the rationale. And there's thousands of these. So I'm just picked that one because it's one I talked about. Thousands of them. So this is how to hear the Torah. Listen to the sages. Because you're really not listening to the sages. Who are you listening to? Moses. And God, of course, who gave it to Moses. So just as a review, when we looked at listening to the mitzvot, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 verses at least here that say listen to the mitzvot. But how? How do you listen to the mitzvot? First you do it, and then find out what the sages said. Do some research, and it will talk to you. So I know that when I say to you, like, what did you learn from a mitzvah this week? And you're like, I don't know. Which I totally understand. But why is it? Because you don't know what the sages said about it. But once I started learning what the sages said about stuff, this whole world opened up, and then the tzitzit said 35,000 times more than they said to me before. And Shabbat said more. And everything else said more. So listen to the sages. Because of this. They made their hearts like flint. So they could not hear the Torah and the words which the Lord has sent by His Spirit. And who did he give those words to? Moses, who passed it down. Right? Make sense? Okay. So then let's go back to the beginning. What happens if you don't listen to the sages? Now, we're not in a Jewish world, in a Jewish nation, with people doing Judaism, but you'll die spiritually. You may not die physically, but you'll die spiritually. Absolutely. So, I mean, you can take it at face value, take it physically if you want, that the one who doesn't listen to the words of the judges and the sages, they are executed. You can take that literally if you want. I think it's going a little too far. I don't take it literally because we're not in that world. We're in this Roman world. And in this Roman world, I think what it leads to is spiritual death. You're killing yourself, basically. That's what I think. But that's between you and God. So, first we had listening to God. Then we had listening to the heel, the ekev. What is the heel?
The smallest mitzvah.
Yeah, the smallest mitzvah that everybody grinds under their heel. And then we had listening to all the mitzvot. And now we have how to do that. Listen to the sages, the judges. That means you're going to have to study way more than you thought. Because you don't know. You're no Rashi. I am no Rashi. I don't know. And what I don't know, I say I don't know. But you got to get to the place where you can say, I don't know. I'll go find out. I'll go study it. So let's say this together. Baruch atah Adonai hamlamed Torah le'amo Yisrael. Blessed are you, Lord, our God, who teaches Torah to his people Israel. Lord, thank you for coming up with so many creative ways to teach us your Torah. And that you gave it in an unbroken chain of authority that we can absolutely trust with our life, with our thoughts, with our breath, with everything. We can trust it because it's you. It's your word. And you have protected that on so many levels. I thank you, Lord, for the continuity, and ask that you'd open up the eyes of countless people in your body to see how they have disconnected themselves or been forced to be disconnected, or both, from your chain of authority. Thank you, Abba. Amen. Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom.